How you doing, fellow coders, and welcome back to LARTech. In today's video, we're going to be going over something pretty simple in Python, but it's going to be very important. In this video, we're going to be covering conditions and logic. So we're going to go through if statements, else statements, elif statements. We're going to go through nested if statements, and we're also going to go through all the different types of conditions, including double equals, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and everything like that. So stay tuned, watch till the end, because it's going to be a great video, and it's going to be pretty important, because you're going to need this pretty much every time you're coding. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alright, so I'm here in Sublime Text, so open it up. We're going to be starting our tutorial series here as always. So here in Sublime Text, let's create our new script. And let us call it maybe conditions and logic.py. Hit enter, and we've created our script. Alright, so I mentioned if statements. If you don't know what an if statement is right now, it's fine. It should be pretty intuitive because it's pretty simple to understand. It's pretty much just like English. So if statements are a way in Python to ask the computer if something is true or not. So how you write an if statement is, and I'll go back to my code here. So you write an if statement just using the if keyword. So we can say if, and as you can see, it immediately pops up because it's pretty common. If, and then you have your condition. And your condition is just something that you say, and the if part tests if it's true. For example, you could say 1 is more than 0, and that would be your condition. After you add it to the if statement is going to check if 1 is more than 0, and then it'll do all of your stuff that you want it to do. So let's say if, and right now we don't really need that much, so let's just say if 2 is greater than 1, and keep in mind here I'm using the greater than sign, which looks like a sideways V kind of. So if 2 is greater than 1, and now what we do is we use the colon, and we hit enter, and now we've created our if statement. Here in Sublime Text, as you can see, Sublime Text automatically indented, and this is for a very good reason. In Python, you don't have curly brackets, so the way you separate between different blocks of code is with indents. So Sublime Text helpfully indented, which is a great thing for it to do. Alright, so let's just keep going. What do we want to happen if 2 is greater than 1? What should we do? Well, we can do anything. We can call a function, we can take some input, we can print a statement, or we can do another if statement if we wanted to. But for now, I'm just going to say print true. So all this is doing is it's checking, is 2 greater than 1? Alright? And if 2 is indeed greater than 1, then it's going to print true. And that is my little brother. Yeah. Bye. But anyways, as I was saying, if 2 is greater than 1, then we tell the computer to print true. Here, when we run this code with Control B, we should obviously get true outputted. So if we hit Control B, we get true. So everything's working fine. Alright, so here we've just done a simple condition saying 2 is greater than 1. But I want to try to get variables into our if statements. And if you don't know what a variable is, then go ahead and watch the previous videos in the series, because I've covered what a variable is and exactly how to use it and what it does. So it's going to be really helpful to go learn what a variable is. If you know what a variable is, stick around and let's make 2 of them. Let's say variable 1. And keep in mind the variable name doesn't matter. All that matters is the information it stores. Variable 1, and let's set that variable's value to something like 5. And I'm just going to Control-C, Control-V, duplicate it, and I'll say variable 2 is equal to 4. Alright, so now we have our 2 variables, and let's make an if statement with them. So here I'm just going to comment out this code, and I'll make a new if statement, again with the if keyword. I'll say if variable 1 is greater than variable 2, Again, I'm using the greater than. symbol, colon, enter. Then what do we want to do? For now, let's just say print true again. Now what this is going to do is it's going to check if the value of variable 1, which in this case is 5, is greater than the value of variable 2, which in this case is 4. Then we say print true. And since 5 is greater than 4, what this is going to do is it's going to print true. So if we hit Control B to run, we will get true. And this was obviously expected. Alright, so what if we changed around the values of these variables? Let's make variable 2 6. Alright. Now, variable 2 is greater than variable 1. So what does that mean? That means that this condition is not going to return true. It's going to return false. So, since variable 1 is not greater than variable 2, in fact it's less than variable 2, then we will not print true. Nothing will happen. So if we hit Control B to run, we don't get any output, as you can see here. All it says is that we finished in 0.2 seconds. So once again, our if statement is working perfectly. Now so far we've just done if something is greater than something, but here what I want to do is I want to use the double equal symbol. So I'm just going to comment my code out with Control \, and now I'll make my if statement. So I'll go down and I'll say if variable 1 is equal to 7, and of course right now variable 1 is not equal to 7, it's equal to 5, colon, and then enter, and let's just print 7 or whatever. Again, it doesn't matter. So if we hit Control B now, we will get nothing, and this should be expected. Since variable 1 is not equal to 7, we don't get any output. But if we change variable 1 to 7, we are obviously going to get output, and we're going to have 7 printed. So it should be pretty clear what if statements do so far, but let's just cover some more examples because you're going to probably need them. So I'm going to hit Control B again, not Control B, I'm going to hit Control \, again, and comment out my code. And now let's cover the greater than or equal to sign. Now the greater than or equal to sign does exactly what it sounds like it does. It checks if one variable, or not even a variable, any value, one value is greater than or equal to another value. For example, if we have 5 and 4, 5 is greater than 4. So if you use the greater than or equal to operator, it would return true. But if you use something like 3 and 4, and you use the greater than or equal to operator, since 3 is not greater than 4 and it's not equal to 4, it's going to return false. So I hope that makes sense. So let's just go back to our code. And now I'm going to make an if statement, and I'll use the greater than or equal to sign. So I'll say if variable 1 is greater than or equal to, and this is how we write the greater than or equal to. We just use the greater than sign and we use the equal sign. If variable 1 is greater than or equal to variable 2, colon, enter, and let's say print variable 1 is larger. Now if we run this with Control B, we'll get variable 1 is larger. Now this is because 7 is obviously larger than 6, and it passes one of those two criteria. Now the same thing will happen for every number greater than 6. So if we made it 8, hit Control B to run, we would get the same output. If we made it 9, hit Control B to run, we would still get the same output. But what if we made it 6? Would we get the same output? Let's see. Control B to run, and we still get the same output. And this is because we're using the greater than or equal to sign. Since 6 is equal to 6, this condition is met, and this is printed. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and comment this code out, and I'm just realizing now I shouldn't have said variable 1 is larger, but again, it doesn't matter what you print, so I'll just leave it. Alright, so far we've only been covering conditions where we're testing if something is true. What if you wanted to test if something was false? Well, that's what the not equal to sign is going to do. So if we go to our code and say if variable 1 is not equal to, and not equal to is expressed with an exclamation point and an equal sign after that exclamation point. So if variable 1 is not equal to, let's say 7, print, forgetting my string, if variable 1 is not 7. So if we hit Control B to run now, we'll get variable 1 is not 7. Since variable 1 is 6 and that's obviously not 7, we get that printed. What if we change it to 7? Here nothing is printed. This is because variable 1 is 7, so this condition is not met. So that should be pretty simple. It's only a true or false thing, so I'm just going to comment that out. And now let's move on to the AND keyword. So far we've only been testing if a single condition is true. What if we wanted to test if multiple conditions were true? That's where we use the AND keyword. The AND keyword allows us to test if a single condition is true and something else is also true. For example, we could test if 1 was larger than 0 and if it was smaller than 2. And in that case, that would return true. So let's go back to our code and let's implement the AND keyword in our code. So let's say if variable 1, all right, is less than 10 and variable 1 is greater than 1, then we use another colon and enter, and we say print, and let's just say true for now. All right. The first condition is variable 1 smaller than 10? Yeah, it is. Now let's move on. Is variable 1 smaller than 10 and is it also greater than 1? Well, yes it is. 7 is greater than 1. So both those conditions are met, which is why we get true printed. So if we hit Control B to run, as you can see, we get true printed. So everything's working perfectly fine. So right here we're testing if two things are true. What if you wanted to test if one thing or another thing is true? Well, you can do that in Python. You can do that with the OR keyword. The OR keyword makes it so that either one of those conditions has to be true for the if block to be executed. So for example, if we had if 7 is larger than 6 or 7 is smaller than 1, since 7 is not smaller than 1, but 7 is larger than 6, one of those conditions is met, and we return true. This can be useful in a lot of cases. So let's go back to our code and implement it. So here I am back in Sublime Text, and I'll comment out these two lines with Control \. Now I'll make another if statement. If variable 1 is larger than 50, or variable 1 is smaller than 10, print true. All right? So here, the first thing that we're testing is variable 1 greater than 50? No, it's not. It's 7. Well, is it less than 10? Yeah, it is. It's 7. Well, one of those conditions is met, so I'll let you pass. That's essentially what the program is saying. Since one of those conditions is met, we get true. It's important to remember here that with the OR keyword, it does not mean that both of those conditions cannot be true, right? So the OR keyword is saying only one of those has to be true, but both can be true if you want. So if we made this condition something like if variable 1 is smaller than 20 or it is smaller than 10, we're still going to get true printed. This is because the OR keyword does not exclude anything. All right? So if we hit Control B to run, we will get true still. So I hope that makes sense. All right, so far we've only done if statements. What if we wanted to test something, but we wanted to do something else if our test returned false? Well, that's where you can use the else keyword. Let's say we have a condition and the condition is not met. Let's say if 1 is greater than 5 and we do something. Well, the condition will not be true because 1 is obviously not greater than 5. So if we just left it at that, nothing would happen. Since the condition was not met, nothing would happen. But if we use the else keyword directly after our if keyword, then we could specify something else to happen. So if we said else and then do something, we would not get nothing. We would get the else keyword, we would go to that else block, and we would do whatever it said. So let's go back to our code and let's implement an else statement. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'll say if variable 1 is smaller than 5, print variable 1 is small. So if we run this right now, we will not get any output. This is because variable 1 is obviously greater than 5. Now let's say else. Else print variable 1 is big. Here we have two blocks of code. We have our if block and we have our else block. This is why we have to indent on both blocks. Now if we run this again, you'll get variable 1 is big. As you can see here, this condition is not met, so our code directly jumps here and it executes whatever is said here. Alright, now what if our first if statement turned out to be true? What will happen? Well, let's say if variable 1 is less than 10, print variable 1 is small. Now if we run this, we get variable 1 is small. Our else statement is completely ignored because our first condition was met. So if our first condition is met, then there's no point of the else condition. Alright, so with our if and else statements, we're only checking if two possible things can occur. We're checking, first of all, if our if condition is met, then it will execute whatever code is inside there. And second of all, we're checking if the if condition is false, then the else condition will execute whatever is inside of that. Now those are only two possible things. And that is the maximum when you're using if and else. What if we wanted to add more possible conditions? What if we wanted to check like 3 things or 4 things or 5 things? Well, that's where the elif keyword comes in. The elif keyword in Python, also known as the else if keyword in a lot of other languages, just checks if something else is true. Alright? So if we have our if statement, first of all, and instead of checking if that is true and then checking if it's not true, we can check, is that true? Alright, if it's not, then check, is this new thing true? And if that's not, then do anything else. Alright? So we can do that like infinitely. We can use however many elif statements our heart desires. So I'm going to go back to my code and I'm going to comment out what I have so far. And let's create an if, elif, else statement. Alright? So let's say if variable 1 is smaller than 0, print variable 1 is smaller than 0. Now instead of saying else, let's say elif variable 1 is greater than, let's say 10. Let's say print variable 1 is greater than 10. So here, it's not just a binary decision. It's not just 2 decisions. There can be more than 2. And finally, let's just say else and say print none of those 2 things were true. Alright? So here we're testing 3 things. We're testing if variable 1 is smaller than 0, and if it is not, then go to the next thing, and then we're testing is variable 1 greater than 10, and if it is, then it prints, but if it's not, then it prints this, alright? So I hope all of that makes sense. Let's hit Control B to test it out right now. Right now, it's saying none of those 2 things were true. This is because variable 1 is currently equal to 7. Now 7 is not smaller than 0, and 7 is still not greater than 10. That's why our else statement gets executed. So if we changed our variable 1, let's make it something like 11. Now what's going to happen, and I accidentally zoomed out a bit, now what's going to happen is it's going to check Is variable 1 smaller than 0? No, it's not. Is variable 1 greater than 10? Yes, it is. So it's going to print variable 1 is greater than 10. So if we hit Control B now, we'll get variable 1 is greater than 10, and our elif statement is working perfectly fine. So that's the elif statement. Now another thing we can do with if statements is that we can nest them. What this means is that we can use an if statement inside of an if statement. So when would you ever use this? Well, let's say you want to check if one thing is true, and then let's say if that thing is true, you want to check something else, and you want to check if that's true. Alright? So maybe if you have your player's score in a game, maybe you want to check maybe if it's greater than 100. Alright? So you make an if statement saying if player score is greater than 100, and inside of that if statement, if it is greater than 100, then maybe you can check, is it greater than 500? If it is, then do something else. But if it's not, then do something, right? So that's a great place to use a nested if statement. I hope you can see all that logic that goes into that. So let's go back to our code and let's make a nested if statement. I'll comment out my current elif else statement, right? I'll comment that out and let's make a nested if statement. So let's say if variable 1 is greater than 5, then we check if variable 1 is greater than 50, print variable 1 is way big. Else, print variable 1 is kinda, sorta, maybe big. Alright? And if it's not even larger than 5, then let's say else print variable 1 is not even larger than 5. Wow, that's sad. Alright. So, the first thing is that our code is checking is variable 1 greater than 5. If it is, then it goes inside of the if statement, it goes inside of the if block, and it checks, is it larger than 50? If it is larger than 50, then it goes inside of this if block, and it executes this code. If it's not, then it goes inside of this else block, and it executes the else block's code. Now, if it's not even greater than 5, then it exits all of this, it completely ignores all of this code, it goes to the else statement, and it prints this. It prints variable 1 is not even larger than 5. Wow, that's sad. Alright, so if we hit Control B now, we will get variable 1 is kinda, sorta, maybe big. This is because variable 1 is indeed larger than 5, but it is nowhere near larger than 50. It's only 11, alright? So what if we made it like 68 or something? Now if you run our code again, variable 1 is way big, as you can see, because variable 1 is greater than 5 and it's also greater than 50, so that means variable 1 must be way big. Now if it's not even greater than 5, maybe it's 2, then we print variable 1 is not even larger than 5. Wow, that's sad. Alright, so I hope that makes you understand what nested if statements are, because they're really useful and you're going to be using them a lot. So for now, I'm just going to comment out the nested if statement, and I think that's where I'm going to end the video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I really hope you learned something about logic in Python, and I hope to see you in the next video. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, and dislike if you didn't. Make sure to comment what I did wrong so I can improve if you didn't like the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to see more tech and programming content related to this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you never miss a new video. Again, I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, this has been Lartech, signing out. Have a good day.